Hey guys, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm doing my April wrap up, which is really late because it's already over halfway through May and I still haven't done it. But in the month of April, I ended up reading 13 books, so it was a really good reading month for me. I'm pretty shocked that I managed to get that many done because like at the end of April, I felt like I had read nothing, but it was like 13 books. So, I mean, the first book that I read in the month of April was an audiobook, and I listened to Dear Martin by Nick Stone. This is a book that I gave 5 stars. It was absolutely amazing. It's along the same lines as The Hate You Give, and I feel like it's a very appropriate to have read, where there's been so many people calling the cops on people of color just for being in a place where they feel they shouldn't be for some reason. I don't get it. Like, it doesn't make sense. Well, I know it's just their racism, but like, it doesn't make sense to me, and it never will. But that book, Dear Martin, is told from the perspective of a teenager who goes to a really good private school, and he gets arrested one night when he's trying to help his ex-girlfriend, and yeah, it just kind of, he didn't think that something like that would ever happen to him, and then it kind of just spirals on from there, and just, it's very eye-opening. It's hard not to feel for the character when you see all this stuff that he goes through for absolutely no reason other than the color of his skin. It's ridiculous, and how people judge him. I He is basically writing letters to Martin Luther King Jr., which is why it's called Dear Martin, because he's writing a journal after getting arrested because he doesn't know how, like, he's trying to find some way to connect with Martin Luther King Jr. because he just doesn't understand how this happened to him, where he is like a honor student at a private school going to an Ivy League college in the fall, and he just never expected this to happen to him. But I would definitely recommend it if you like The Hate You Give. It is along the same lines. They're fairly similar, but they both have different perspectives. So it was really, I found it still really interesting, even though I've read The Hate You Give. So I've read a book very similar to it, but I was still able to read it, and I still loved it, and I still gave it 5 stars. I think I might actually like that one a little bit more than The Hate You Give because it's not as hyped up as The Hate You Give was. But yeah, it definitely was a great way to start the month of reading for me. So the second book that I read in April was Wild Magic by Tamora Pierce. This is the first book in the Immortals series. I've been slowly reading Tamora Pierce. This one follows a young girl named Dane who has wild magic, which means she can understand animals, which I think would be an absolutely amazing ability. Like, if I was to have magic, that's what I would want, was to be able to understand and communicate with animals, because it just, I love animals. Something that I would just really enjoy. This one follows her as she's finding her new place in the world because she's been run out of her home for some reason or other, and you find out when you read it why she's been run out of her home, and she's alone. She gets a job handling horses for the Queen's Riders, which is something that has come about after the events of the previous books, the Song of the Lioness that follows Elena. Elena is in this book. It's really cool to see her in there, and I really enjoyed reading this. I'm looking forward to continuing on with the series. I haven't continued on yet, but hopefully I will continue on with this one later this month. I own this whole series because the Book Depository, or because the Book Depot. I've done orders with other people so that we could order from Book Depot, which has even better rates than Book Outlet, which is shocking because, you know, Book Outlet's already got great rates. But yeah, I got this one from Book Depot, and so far I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying the series more than the Song of the Lioness, which I really also, I also really enjoyed. So yeah, hopefully it will continue to be as good as this first book was. The third book that I read this month was The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. I listened to that one on audiobook as well. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I honestly was not sure what to expect from this book going into it. It was really hyped, which is basically the only reason that I read it. But when I read the synopsis, I was kind of like unsure of if it was something I was gonna like, but since everyone else was really enjoying it, I thought I would give it a try, and I actually really enjoyed it a lot. It was a little slow in some places, which is why I only gave it a 4, but I will be continuing on with that. I think it's a duology when the other book comes out, though I'm not sure what the second book is going to be about because it seemed like the ending was kind of final, but I don't know, maybe it'll follow somebody else in the series. I don't know. It was really interesting and it definitely lived up to the hype for me. So I would have actually already gotten a few people to read it because I enjoyed it so much and they also enjoyed it. So it's something that I have recommended and probably will continue to recommend as time goes on because it was just a really fun read for me. The next book I read was a nonfiction book, and that was You're Never Weird on the Internet, Almost by Felicia Day. I actually listened to this while reading it because there are pictures in the book from Felicia as she's growing up. So, like, just little pictures that go along with what she's narrating. And, you know, I just feel like if you're reading a book about someone, it's always better to hear it in their voice. And I absolutely love Felicia Day. I stumbled across her years ago with The Guild, which is basically how she became as famous. It was like her big moment in the internet. um, and I just fell in love with her because, you know, one, she's a fellow ginger, so I have to appreciate that. And two, she's a fellow geek. And I, of course, appreciate that because when the Guild became as popular as it was, there was like this misconception that girls didn't play video games and like I play World of Warcraft, so there was like this misconception that girls were bad at video games if they played video games. So whenever someone would find out that I was a girl in World of Warcraft, they would start acting weird and they would think that I wasn't actually a good player, but I was just there because I was a girl and people were like, oh my god, a girl. But yeah, it was really interesting to hear about everything she went through, all her struggles with mental illness. I struggle with depression, so it was very interesting to read about her going through similar things and to find out like why she's done so many things in her career and just things like that. But it was really good. I gave it 5 out of 5 because it was hilarious, and I just enjoyed it so much. The next book that I read was The Wife by Alifar Burke. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce the name, but I think maybe. I listened to this one on audiobook. It is a thriller about a woman and her husband. Her husband has been accused of sexual assault and rape, and he is going through like this whole court case. He's a very known person in the community, so he is getting a lot of backlash, and because of that backlash, she's getting a lot of backlash. They have a child. Um, Not together. It was her child before she met, like she had a child before she married him, but like he has accepted the child as his own. So they have a child together, and it's just showing like this whole backlash, and it's just like I don't know, it's a mystery thriller, I guess, but like I had no idea that the ending was coming. Like this one threw me right off. I have been reading quite a bit of mysteries and thrillers lately. Well, this year more than I normally would because before this year I pretty much read none. But I really enjoyed this one. I had a hard time putting it down. I gave it a 4 out of 5. It was a little slow in the middle, but once it got past that little bit of slowness, it just flew by and I couldn't put it down. I could not stop listening to it, and I just had to know what was going to happen, and it just threw me off because I was not expecting the ending at all. But I mean, I should have saw it coming, but I just didn't. But yeah, it is one that I'll definitely be recommending. I'm going to be checking out some of Burke's other books. I think there's one called The X, which is along the same lines, like some of the same characters as from this one. But yeah, I'll be checking that one out as well, and hopefully I'll enjoy it as much as I enjoyed this one, because I really enjoyed this one a lot. The next book that I read was another audiobook, and that was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. There was so much hype going on about this book that I had to pick it up, and I was lucky enough to get the audiobook from my library, so I gave it a listen to, and I pretty much listened to that whole thing in like a day or two because I had such a hard time putting it down. I loved it. I gave it a 5 out of 5. I was not expecting to like it. I remember I messaged my friend like when I was about halfway through. I was like, I really hate this guy. He's such a jerk. And I was like, and then like a little while later, I was like, this is gonna be another situation like this other book, and she's just like, yeah, it is. And I was like, yeah, I thought so. But it's another book that I really love, so I didn't care. But I really enjoyed it. It's about a human girl who ends up living in the fairy world, with her mom's ex-husband. As far as I know, I think he's a red cap. So yeah, he takes her and her sisters to live with him because they don't have anyone else to look after them anymore. And yeah, he raises her there, and she wants to stay in the fairy world because she just loves it there so much, and she's just looking to try and find her place in that world where the fae just absolutely hate humans and think they're disgusting. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I will be continuing on in that series for sure, and I can't wait for the next one to come out because it was just that good. So going from a 5-star to this next book, I read The Summer Tree by Guy Gabriel Kay. I have heard so much about this author, and I don't know if it was just this book in particular. I will be continuing on the series, but I gave it a 3 out of 5. I liked it, but it was very slow. It took me almost a month to read this book, and it just kind of dragged on in some parts. It was a little confusing in some parts, and like it wasn't really until I got to like the second half that I started flying through it, because like the first half was just really confusing, which I can understand because you have to build a whole world in that first half of the book, and then things start happening in the second half. But I did enjoy it, and I'll be continuing on because I have the other 2 books in the trilogy. I'm hoping that it gets better because this one was a really slow read. It was a quick read, but it was slow. Like when I was reading, I would read a lot at once, like more pages than I would expect to read, and it's just I didn't have the urge to really pick it up all the time, and I read all these other books in between when I started this and finished it. But I did manage to finish it, and I'll be continuing on because it's high fantasy, and everyone is always going on about how great Guy Gabriel Kay is. He's a Canadian author, so I want to really like this series. Like, it's something I really wanted to like, and I just, it was just the first half was slow. So maybe now that things have been like built up, the rest of the series will go by quickly for me. The next book that I read was Secret by Elle Marie Edlin. This is a book about a girl whose husband has died like 5 years previously, and she's just really lonely and dissatisfied with her life. It is an erotica, so it's about rediscovering herself with the help of a secret society who help her go through some of her fantasies. And I liked it. I gave it a 3. I liked some parts of it, but other parts I thought were weird. And it was kind of disappointing. Like, it ended really, like, I really didn't like the ending of this one. I guess it's going to be a series. Or I guess it's a series because I've had this on my shelf forever. And I just didn't like how it ended. I feel like it's something that was used all the time and just it pissed me off. But yeah, overall, I gave it a 3. Some parts of it were good, some parts were just blah. But other than that, it was just a fun, smutty read for the most part. I read it pretty quickly. Um, but I'm probably not going to continue on with this series just because this one made me so mad at the end. Next up, I read The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin, which I gave a 4 out of 5. I listened to this one on audiobook. This is the second book in the 5th season. I guess it's called the Broken Earth trilogy, I think. I'm not sure. It's about a dystopian world where there's like frequent earthquakes and shudders and stuff like that, and there's these people who can control those, but they're like low-class citizens. People don't like them. Even though they can control these, they can also cause them to happen. So I guess people just really don't like them. Um, but I really enjoyed it. I can't really talk too much about it because it is the second book in the trilogy, but it is a really good series. I can definitely see why it has won awards. I'm really enjoying it. I can't wait to read the last book and see how it all ends because I'm like really enjoying it, and I get completely absorbed in the world when I'm reading these ones. Next up was my book club book for April, and that was The Tempest and Slaughter by Tamora Pierce. This is the first in her new series, which follows Aram Draper before he became known as Numiere the Wizard. And basically, a lot of people compare this to Harry Potter because it is going through like his school life, and he's at a boarding school. He's got 2 best friends, and it is kind of a little bit like Harry Potter, but it's also not like Harry Potter. I would say it's kind of like Harry Potter meets Name of the Wind when Kavoth is in school going to the university. So kind of like that. I really enjoyed it. It's classic fantasy. I can't wait to continue on. I gave it a 4 out of 5. There was a few things that were a little bit slow on it in it, but it's been really interesting so far, and I can't wait to read the next book. I think it's only a duology, so it should be really interesting to see where things go because it's probably going to ramp up a lot once we get to the next book. Next book that I read was The Mad Ship by Robin Hobb. It is the second book in the Live Ship Traders trilogy, and I absolutely loved it. I gave it a 5-star rating. I give it a 5-star rating. I can't get enough of it. I think I actually like this series more than I like the Farseer trilogy, the first series that I read by her. And I'm just really glad that I'm enjoying her writing because she has so many books out there that follow like the same world, and it just makes me really happy when authors do that, and it's something that I really enjoy because like I'm the type of person where if I really like a book, I need to like read more in that universe because it's just so good. This one is again follows multiple characters, and so can you stop that? This one follows multiple characters, some of them better points of view than others. I don't really like Malta because she's kind of a little bit of a user. She uses people. But I do like Althea, and I do like reading, like learning more about Paragon and like all the live ships. It's just a really interesting world, and I just love how it all comes together, and I'm looking forward to finishing up that series, and hopefully I'll love it as much as I've loved the first 2 books. It's definitely something that I will be recommending to people because it's just a really awesome world, and I just can't wait, and it's really cool to see how it's all coming together because all the books are kind of related a little bit because they are in the same world. The storylines kind of there'll be like a mention of something in this one which I can remember from Farseer trilogy, and I just really enjoy that. it's just a really interesting thing for me, and I can't wait to find like more of that in the next book and the rest of her series, because I'm definitely going to be continuing on. I already have all of the books for the next series, which I think is the Tawny Man series, which is just ready for me to read. I just need to get a hold of Ship of Destiny at some point. I really need a copy of that on audiobook, because I've been listening to audiobook of that the whole time, and it's just really interesting. And it's amusing because like the one of the characters in this series is named Althea, and it's funny. My brother and his girlfriend found out that they're going to be having a girl, and when I asked them what the name was that they had picked out, because they already have a name picked out, the name was Althea, and I was like, I've never heard that name before until I started listening to the series, and now like I'm going to have a niece named that. So it's kind of cool, and I'm just really glad that I decided to try out these books, because my husband tried to read one of her books before and he didn't like it, so he was like telling me how bad it was, and I was like, oh well, I'm still going to try it. So I'm liking it, and I'm trying to get him to try it again. He tried reading like the first book in one of the series I haven't got to yet, so it's like further along in the timeline, and I'm just like, you need to go back and start from the beginning, because they're really good. So hopefully I can talk him into that, but probably not. The next book that I read was Thornhill by Kathleen Peacock. This is a paranormal, like urban fantasy-ish book. It's about werewolves. It's the second book in a series, and it's kind of funny because like the author of this book lives in the same city that I live in, which is really weird. I live in New Brunswick, which is like the smallest unknown province, which is one of the most unknown provinces in Canada. So, I mean, she actually lives in the same city as me, and I've met her because she joined my book club. She hasn't been there in a while because she's really busy. So I'm kind of wondering if maybe she's writing something new. But I've been really enjoying this, and I've given this one a 4 out of 5, and I can't wait to read the next book. I just fly through these. I don't know what it is about, like, urban fantasy, paranormal things, but I just fly through them for some reason. Like, I just really enjoy reading it, and it's like, I don't know, it's just really good, and I can't wait to read the next one and see how it's all going to end, because I'm kind of really invested in this story now. I really enjoyed the first one when I read it, but like this one, like the second one, I think I maybe enjoyed it even a little bit more. And like I read the first one, when I read the first one, I had no idea who she was, and like I'd been talking to her online about the book club, and I'm like, this person's name sounds really familiar. I can't figure out where I've heard her name before, and we figured it out, and it was kind of funny when we did. But like, I'm really glad that I actually had that opportunity, and I'm really glad to be reading these books because they're really good and I enjoy them a lot. Anyways, and the last and final book that I read in the month of April was Obsidia by Amy Coffin and Jay Kristoff. It is the final book in the Illuminate files, and I loved it. I read this in one day, which, you know, considering it is over 600 pages, is a bit ridiculous. But I read this during Dewey's 24-hour readathon, and I was not going to stop reading until I finished it. And I finished it, like, just before the 24 hours was up. So I'm really glad I read this for that. And, like, I thought it was a really amazing end to the trilogy and, like, the whole story. And it just all wrapped up really nicely. And, God, I hated Aiden to begin with, but now I love Aiden. And I don't know, this series was just so good, and I loved it so much, and I just love how it's written, and I can't wait to see what these, like, I can't wait to read more of the works of these authors. I've read literally everything so far that Jay Kristoff has published. The only thing that I need to read is Lifelike, but it's not out in Canada yet, so I mean, I don't have it, so hopefully I can get it soon, and hopefully I will enjoy it because it sounds really good as well. But like, this series, if you haven't read it, definitely recommend it. I think I'll probably end up rereading this while listening to the audiobook, because I heard the audiobooks are really good and I hadn't listened to the audiobooks, so I'm probably going to do that at some point. I don't know when. But yeah, 5 out of 5 for that one is just no question. So these are the books that I read in the month of April. Let me know down below if you've read any of them and what you thought, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!